In the summer of 1941, a Swiss engineer named Georges de Mestral went for a walk in the Alps with his dog. It was a pleasant afternoon hike, but upon returning home, he found himself annoyed. Both his wool trousers and his dog's fur were covered in hundreds of stubborn, spiny burrs that refused to let go. Most men would have simply brushed them off and cursed the weeds. But de Mestral was an engineer. Driven by curiosity, he peeled one of the burrs off his pants and placed it under a microscope. What he saw amazed him. The burr was not just a spiky ball. It was covered in thousands of tiny, perfectly formed hooks that had latched onto the loops of the fabric and fur with incredible tensile strength. Inspired by this mechanism, he spent the next decade developing a synthetic version. He named his invention by combining the French words velours and crochet, and Velcro was born. That plant gave the modern world a billion-dollar fastener industry. But in our rush to utilize the engineering genius of the seed, we completely discarded the plant itself. While the Western world labeled this plant a nuisance weed to be sprayed and eradicated from lawns, the Japanese recognized it as something else entirely. They cultivated it into a premium vegetable called gobo, a pillar of their traditional diet renowned for promoting longevity. This is the Burdock, Arctium lappa. Welcome to Ancestral Yields. If you want to rediscover the forgotten plants that modern agriculture paved over, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Long before it was a nuisance, burdock was a staple survival food across the Northern Hemisphere. In North America, the Iroquois and other indigenous tribes utilized the plant extensively. Ethnobotanical records show they dried the roots for winter storage, relying on them when game was scarce. But they also knew the plant offered something sweet. The young flower stalks, harvested in early summer before the flowers bloom, were peeled and boiled, sometimes in maple syrup. This preparation, which tastes surprisingly like artichoke hearts, was later adopted by settlers and affectionately known as cowboy candy. Across the Atlantic, medieval Europe told a similar story. Burdock was a standard potherb in the cottage garden, prized for its ability to cut through grease. In an era where the peasant diet relied heavily on fatty meats when available, burdock root was cooked alongside them to aid digestion. But its most famous European legacy is in a glass. Dandelion and burdock has been a traditional beverage in the British Isles since the Middle Ages. Originally, it was a light mead, a fermented tonic made from the roots of both plants, drunk to clear the liver and blood after a long winter. It was the original root beer. However, the culture that truly elevated burdock is Japan. Introduced to the islands around 900 AD during the Heian period, likely from China as a medicinal herb, Japanese farmers did what Europeans refused to do. They domesticated it. Over centuries of selective breeding, they transformed the wild, skinny roots into gobo. Thick, mild, fleshy taproots that can grow 3 feet long. It became a cornerstone of Shojin Ryori, the sophisticated Buddhist temple cuisine that focuses on seasonal, plant-based eating. But how did burdock go from being an indigenous staple to a noxious weed in North America? In the 18th and 19th centuries, wool was a primary economic engine for Europe and the early United States. Sheep farming was big business, and burdock was a natural threat. When sheep grazed in fields infested with burdock, the hooked burrs would become hopelessly entangled in the fleece. This created what was known as faulty wool or burry wool. The vegetable matter was nearly impossible to remove without damaging the fibers, and it often required a harsh chemical process called carbonizing to burn the burrs out with acid. That process damaged the delicate textile machines in the factories, and it drastically lowered the value of the clip. To protect the national export, burdock was declared a noxious weed. Farmers were legally mandated to destroy it because it was a financial liability to the wool barons. Then came the mechanization of the harvest. As agriculture moved away from human labor toward heavy machinery, crops were selected based on how easily they could be harvested. Burdock presents a logistical nightmare for a tractor. Its taproot grips the earth with immense strength. Unlike a carrot, which sits politely in the top 6 inches of topsoil, harvesting burdock requires deep excavation. It demands a shovel, a backhoe, or a specialized trencher. In a new agricultural system that prioritized speed, shallow tillage, and efficiency, a crop that required you to dig halfway to China to harvest it was abandoned. But when we traded the shovel for the tractor, we lost access to the minerals hidden deep in the earth. This plant acts as a biodrill. Because its taproot plunges 2 to 3 feet into the subsoil, it punches through hardpan clay that stops delicate crops like lettuce or corn. It accesses mineral veins deep underground, pulling up nutrients that have been leached away from the surface. When we look at the hard data, burdock stands tall against modern staples. According to the USDA FoodData Central database, 100 grams, about 3.5 ounces, of raw burdock root contains approximately 38 milligrams of magnesium. That is more than triple the amount found in the same weight of carrots, which offer only about 12 milligrams. Magnesium is critical for over 300 enzyme reactions in the human body, and most Americans are deficient in it. Then there is potassium, the mineral that regulates fluid balance and blood pressure. We are told to eat bananas for potassium, but burdock is a local rival. A 100-gram serving of burdock delivers 308 milligrams of potassium, putting it in the same league as a banana, which has 358 milligrams, but without the massive sugar spike. But the true magic of burdock is not just vitamins and minerals. It is the type of carbohydrate it contains. Most root vegetables, like potatoes, store energy as starch, which rapidly converts to glucose in the body. Burdock stores its energy as inulin. Scientific analysis shows that inulin makes up 45% to 50% of the dried root weight. Humans cannot digest inulin in the stomach. Instead, it passes to the colon, where it ferments and feeds bifidobacteria, the beneficial gut flora that regulate your immune system. It provides a slow-burning energy source that stabilizes blood sugar rather than spiking it. But it should also be consumed in moderation to avoid gastrointestinal distress. Furthermore, pharmacological studies have isolated compounds in the root called lignans, specifically arctigenin and Arctium. Research published in journals like Current Pharmaceutical Design and Inflammapharmacology has shown these compounds to possess potent anti-inflammatory and antioxidant activities. They actively scavenge free radicals and reduce inflammation markers in the blood. This validates the ancient belief that burdock is a blood purifier. It does not magically scrub your blood. It supports the liver and kidneys, the body's filtration systems, helping them eliminate metabolic waste more efficiently. However, because these compounds are biologically active, burdock is not for everyone. First, traditional herbal wisdom and modern caution advise that pregnant or breastfeeding women should avoid consuming large amounts of burdock root, as it has historically been used to stimulate the uterus. Second, because the root is so effective at lowering blood sugar via its inulin content and arctigenin. Diabetics who are taking insulin or other medications should monitor their levels closely to avoid hypoglycemia. Finally, if you are allergic to ragweed, chrysanthemums, or daisies, proceed with caution. Burdock belongs to the same botanical family, the Asteraceae, and can trigger allergic reactions in sensitive individuals. Now that you understand the science, You have two options to bring this powerhouse back to your table. Forage it from the wild or grow it in your garden. If you choose to forage, you must be cautious. Burdock grows in USDA zones 2 through 10 and is often found in disturbed soils, riverbanks, and vacant lots. Identification is critical. In its first year, burdock produces a rosette of large, wavy leaves. To the untrained eye, this can look somewhat similar to foxglove, which is highly toxic and can cause heart failure. The distinction is in the texture. Burdock leaves are coarse, slightly scratchy, and have a white, woolly underside. Foxglove leaves are soft and hairy. Furthermore, because burdock is a bioaccumulator, never forage it from roadsides, near industrial sites, or areas that may have been sprayed with herbicides like Roundup. The root will pull those toxins in, and you do not want to eat them. For the safest harvest, you should grow it. You can source specific culinary seeds, such as the Takenagawa long variety from heirloom suppliers like Kitazawa Seed Company, Johnny's Selected Seeds, or Baker Creek Rare Seeds. However, before you add this to your seed cart, you must check your local regulations. Because burdock is so tenacious and spreads aggressively via its sticky seeds, it is classified as a noxious weed in several U.S. states, particularly in the West, like Colorado and Wyoming. In these jurisdictions, cultivating it might not only be ecologically irresponsible, but illegal. Always consult your county extension office before planting to ensure you are not breaking environmental laws. If you are clear to plant, remember that the root wants to go deep. You need to loosen your soil. If you have heavy clay, build a tall raised bed or grow them in a potato tower to make harvest easier. Plant the seeds in the spring or early fall. The key is to harvest them at the end of the first year. Burdock is a biennial. In the first year, it puts all its energy into the root, and this is when it is edible. To ensure you have a continuous supply without ever buying seeds again, you need to manage this biennial cycle. Treat the plant as an annual for eating, but as a biennial for reproduction. Sow a fresh row of seeds every single spring for your autumn feasts. Leave 1 or 2 plants in the ground through the winter. In their second year, they will become inedible, but they will send up a massive flower stalk that produces thousands of seeds. Harvest these dry burrs in the late summer to plant next year's crop. This creates a closed-loop system. 1 row for the kitchen, 1 plant for the future. The classic preparation is the Japanese dish kinpira gobo. You julienne the root into matchsticks and braise them in sesame oil, soy sauce, sugar, and chili. The flavor is distinct, earthy, sweet, and nutty. Often described as a cross between a parsnip and an artichoke heart, with a satisfying crunch. Burdock is the ultimate survivor. It invented a way to hitchhike across the world on the backs of animals and the pant legs of engineers. It evolved to drill into the hardest, most compacted earth to survive where other plants fail. We hate it because it clings to us, but that clinging is exactly what allowed it to spread and thrive for millennia. If you are ready to grow a garden that feeds you more than just calories, hit that subscribe button for ancestral yields. We have more lost crops to uncover. See you in the garden.